everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. You know who I am. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butchester, and you know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to be your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want you fired up about my guest. His name is Peter Mazurek. We're talking about his book, Modern Catholic Concerns. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do? Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we're about to get started. Hello, Peter. Thank you so much for joining me on Daily Spark TV.
Well, Dr. Angela, I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. I love having my international guest on. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to visit with us today. Now, I have to tell you that I'm excited to talk to you about your book. But one of the things that we do here, of course, is do a little introduction, because there may be some people that are unfamiliar with you or your work. So first question for you is, tell us a little bit about you. What makes you you?
Well, it's a very difficult question to answer in a few words, but basically, if you summarize my bio, if you like, in this way, I was born in Germany in 1944, which means that I'm now 77 years old. My parents migrated to Australia in 1950. I was educated at a private Catholic school, which was called St. Patrick's, at a suburb called Strathfield in Sydney, New South Wales. Completed my education there. I got a Commonwealth scholarship and went to university and studied law. I got my law degree in 1969, and then I worked with the Department of what is now called the Department of Public Prosecutions as an instructing solicitor. And after that, after a couple of years of that, I went to the bar, which is practice as a barrister here on my own for about 5 years. After that, I joined the Government Insurance Office, specialising in medical malpractice. And after that, I joined the Law Society and specialised in professional standards. And I retired in 1999. So I've had a nice long rest since then. My education includes, as I say, a law degree, and after that I did a diploma in criminology. After that I studied philosophy and English at Sydney University for a couple of years. So that basically sums it up. I was married. My wife died in 2003, so I've been living alone since then. I still play sport. I've always liked sport, and I play golf and tennis regularly, but with the sort of levels of skill that you would expect from a 77-year-old man.
I love it. I love that you have had such a full life. You know, I think that one of the greatest things that we can do while we are here on earth is live to our fullest potential, is to live an amazing life. And it sounds like you have done just that. Now, speaking of sharing your book, is being an author something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that life simply presented the opportunity?
I always wanted to do some writing. I've enjoyed that. In my work, especially with the Law Society and even as a barrister, I did a lot of writing, preparing reports. I've had a number of my articles published in the Law Society Journal for instructing solicitors in what to do in relation to avoiding complaints by people, because that's what I did at the Law Society. I handled complaints about solicitors and so on. And so, yeah, I believe, well, I like people, and I want to share the knowledge and experience that I've been fortunate enough to experience in my life with other people who have been less fortunate in terms of their education and experience.
Absolutely. And I have to agree with you there that sharing your knowledge with others is really a huge asset for those who are not able to. I believe I was talking with another guest, and I said, especially here in the States, we take education for granted because we have public education, and we forget that in many countries you have to pay for education, or you have to travel far to get an education. So you are so right. I'm glad that you are sharing that. Now, the title of your book, I know that for many authors, as when they first start writing, they've chosen a totally different title. By the time it's all said and done, they have the final title, and that's what they present to the world. How did you come about your title? Did you start off with a different working title?
No, I chose the title for basically two reasons. I wanted to write about something that was relevant to people in this day and age. It's not a historical work, in other words. So that's why the word modern is in there. I've used the word Catholic because I don't want to mislead anybody into thinking or not knowing who I am and where I'm coming from. I'm a Catholic, and I've written this book as a Catholic, and I don't want to conceal that or mislead anybody into buying a work. I could have called it modern religious concerns or even modern Christian concerns. But as a matter of personal integrity and disclosure, I've said, right, I'm a Catholic, I'll tell people that. If they don't want to buy my book because I'm a Catholic, that's fine. But it, as it were, is being honest with people and saying, this is what the book is all about. And the word concerns, obviously, is issues that are relevant in this day and age, and that people might be able to get some benefit from. So that's why those three words have come in. I chose that as a memory hook, if you like, so that I know what I was going to focus on in writing the book.
I have to agree with you. I think that it is helpful when we can give as much information as we possibly can. And for someone who is not a Catholic, but for someone who is a pastoral counselor who deals with a lot of interfaith couples, it is helpful to read about all aspects of faith and to know the concerns, the cares, the gripes, the happy moments, the joys and celebrations, that we should have a well-rounded perspective of those that are our fellow believers. So I have to agree with you there. It's smart to have put that qualifier there. And hopefully folks will simply utilize the book as the resource that you have presented it as. Now, along that same vein, what is the proper way for someone to read your book? I know for many authors, they write it in a way that you should read it from cover to cover, page after page. For others, they've done perhaps more like a devotional where you read a few pages, put it down and wait till the next day. Others maybe by chapter or by topic. How did you decide to put your book together and present it to the reader?
The book is written in 5 parts. The first part is what I've called parameters. These parameters are basically the reasoning process and how we can go about assessing the persuasiveness of abstract issues. It's based upon my studies in law and my knowledge and experience of law, and I consider very profoundly the rules of evidence that I've learned. So that we're looking at how can you assess sort of abstract arguments about the existence of God, which is not subject to material evidence. The other part of the book is, for example, the divinity of Jesus. Now we know that Jesus was a real person, and here we can look at the evidence that exists in the material world, so that the object of the first part is to give people the tools by which to assess that. It's a bit like a primer, And I think a lot of people who haven't had the education and experience that I've had wouldn't know this. But other lawyers, for example, would know this. A lot of clerics would already know a lot of these sorts of issues about how to consider that. But people who have worked in many of the other hundreds of other trades and occupations wouldn't necessarily know this. So that I thought it's appropriate to start off by giving people a way in which they can be confident of assessing the issues that are going to be discussed. So that was the first part of the book, and then I considered some background issues. For example, in the last part of part one of the book, there's a heading called realms. So I tried to give a clear picture or clear understanding of the difference between the material realm of this world and the spiritual realm, and what we do and do not know about those things. I make the point, I think, that the spiritual realm does exist, because we know that there are things like love, which are spiritual things, and we know that they exist. But we don't really know whether ghosts exist and what powers that ghosts have. We've heard of poltergeists who can move physical objects, so we don't really know a lot about that. And this is the preamble, as it were, the background of the whole thing. The next part is the existence of God. Again, this is a spiritual consideration, and my personal view is that you can't use the Old Testament as evidence of the existence of God, because the Old Testament, to a large part, is the history of the Jewish people. And they, at those times, everybody assumed the existence of God. Nobody really wanted any proof of it. And my work in this area comes from the greatest philosophers in human history, starting with Aristotle and going on to Plato, and then the work of St. Thomas Aquinas, who developed the work of Aristotle in his 5 ways, in the first of the 5 ways. And then I go on to the philosophers who have written about the ontological argument for the existence of God, and then the cosmological argument for the existence of God, and the teleological argument for the existence of God, and other minor arguments like from the existence of consciousness and so on. So these are the areas in which I've focused to try and bring some reasonableness. I suppose part of the reason for doing this is because I have encountered in my life people who have said to me, after I've discussed theology with them or the existence of God, they've said things like, "You can't seriously believe that, can you?" And my point is this: there is no compelling evidence one way or the other. When I say compelling, I do mean compelling, one way or the other. So our faith is basically a matter of choice. And that choice depends on to what degree we are persuaded by the evidence and arguments for the existence of God. So with that in mind, I've put these arguments both for and against. What I'm trying to do is to give people a respectable reason to believe. And if somebody says to you something like, "You can't be serious about that," then you can say, "Well, yes, I can be, because I've got reason to believe." And in fact, I would say the preponderance of evidence is in favor of the existence of God.
I love it. Oh my goodness, I love it. And what a great place. We unfortunately have to go to break. But before we do, can you please remind everyone, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And how do we stay in contact with you?
It's called Modern Catholic Concerns. It's available from Amazon. It's available from my website, which is petermazurek.com. And that actually has a link to my publisher, which is Ex Libris. So they have a bookshop where it's available. And they will be available in other bookshops or where books of this kind can be purchased.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. You guys know who I am, Dr. Angela Tester. My guest today is Peter Mazurek, and we are talking about his book, Modern Catholic Concerns. And I am so excited to have him on. He just gave us some great information. Let's jump back into that conversation. Peter, so my next question for you is, and you slightly touched on it before we went to break, but that is, do you have to be Catholic in order to read your book? Would someone who is agnostic be able to still follow along, or perhaps someone who's new to the faith?
The book is it's called Modern Catholic Concerns, and there's a suggestion there that it is for Catholics, but the different parts of the book are not necessarily that way. The part one, which is the parameters, is for everybody who wants to know about how to assess or consider the religious issues and how persuasive they are. Part one, that's part one. Part two is the existence of God. This is based upon philosophy, and it's applicable to anyone. It can be read by atheists who may not be sure of their own atheism. It can be read by agnostics. It can be read by Muslims who are a monotheistic religion. It can be read by all Christians of all denominations who might have some crisis of faith that they're going through, and they want to know, or they've heard arguments against, and they want to know what the answers to these arguments are. The divinity of Jesus is largely for Christians, but even Muslims could benefit from reading that, simply because Muslim faith says that Jesus was a great prophet, but they deny his divinity, so that they can see why perhaps we believe in the divinity of Jesus. So Buddhists perhaps not so much, because it's not atheistic religion, but they can benefit from understanding why we believe that that is so. So the Jewish faith probably not so much, because they've regarded Jesus as a heretic. And I don't think our reasons for believing change their views at all or influence them. So basically, the divinity of Jesus can be read by most people. The next part of the book is about the authenticity and authority of the church. This is basically aimed at Christians, because in that section of the book, I do consider the Reformation. And the point I make there is that all of the modern Christian religions are offshoots of Catholics. And as Jesus said, nobody comes to the Father except through me. And that means that those denominations still believe in the divinity of Jesus. They still come to the Father through Jesus. So I think it's appropriate for them to get reassurance or respectability about their reasons for believing in the divinity of Jesus. The authority of the church, again, Jesus founded a church, and I think we need to remember that the clerics of the church has an important function. It has to teach every generation of every nation all about that. So the church has an important function, a role to fulfill, and that we should support and respect the clerics of all these denominations for that very reason. And therefore I talk about that. The final section of the book is about, I would say, Christian attitudes to some of the modern issues like murder, suicide, euthanasia, abortion, cloning, stem cell research, terrorism, child sexual abuse, cults, and other issues that I consider in that part of the book. So again, that will give everybody a balanced, say, Christian view of these issues and how we, as Christians, ought to regard these things and how we respond to them. So that's why I think it's for a lot of people can get some benefit from these issues or these considerations.
Thank you so much for that explanation, because I love how you've broken down each section. And I think that the viewers in that explanation, they're going, ooh, that sounds good. I know that I was definitely nodding my head saying, oh yeah, I think I would enjoy that particular section. Oh yeah, that's another good one. So I like how you've broken it up and put it the way that you have, that you've arranged it the way that you have, in order for people to really glean as much as they can from it. I think that's truly important. Now, I don't want to assume that the answer to this question is because it says Catholic in the title. So I'm going to ask it, and that is, what do you think makes your book unique, or what makes your book different?
This is a good question, and I like the question because it's the whole point of my life's experience. I was a lawyer, and I had to be able to argue either side of the case. If a client walked in and he was charged with the offence, then I'd have to try and defend him. If I was prosecuting, then I'd have to try and prosecute that person. In this case, in writing this book, I had the distinct privilege and pleasure of being able to sit in the middle, sit as it were, where the judge is, and present the arguments for and the arguments against. And yes, I've inevitably made an assessment which is coloured by my own beliefs to a certain extent, but I've been objective. And it's not a proselytizing book. I'm not trying to convert anybody to anything. It's not a devotional book. I'm not trying to simply parrot what the devotions of the various faiths are. I'm trying to give people information so that they can think for themselves, make their own, draw their own conclusions, and be able to respond to arguments and doubts that they may have. The book is not comprehensive. There's some things that I haven't dealt with, but I think I've dealt with most of the arguments, for example, about the existence of God. And I think most of us have a crisis of faith at some time in our lives, and being able to have some resource that gives you the answers and gives you the arguments both for and against is a valuable thing. And this is why I've done it, so that people can think for themselves and have the answers. And that's what makes it different. It's gives you both sides. A book written by clerics usually contains only one side of the story. Books written by atheists contain the other side of the story. So this is why I've tried to put them both together. And that's really one of the arguments, or one of the issues that I came up with studies of philosophy, where the philosophers do both sides. You have to read a lot of articles to get the whole balanced view. And this is why I've come up with the main arguments, like, for example, the teleological argument.
I love that you have taken the point of view that you have, because it really allows the reader to go along on the journey with you on the way. I love it. I think it's amazing. Now, my next question for you is about faith in faith itself. Now, and I always tell everyone, I'm not asking you, do you go to church on Sunday, or do you do any particular thing to observe the Sabbath? But more so, kind of zooming out and just asking about your faith in general. Do you think that your faith has helped form you into the person that you are today?
Absolutely. I think that to a large extent, the philosophers say that we are the sum of our memories. And I was brought up as a Catholic, and I've gone through life and had lots of encounters with people who are non-Catholics and people who have had different views from myself. And I've been educated in knowing to know some of the answers to these things. For example, one of the arguments against the existence of God is the existence or the argument that the existence of evil proves that there isn't God, because if God was a loving God, he wouldn't let these terrible things happen. I deal with that fairly extensively in the book. The short answer is no faith that I'm aware of has ever asserted that God is omnipotent. He must always do these things. So this depends on the concept of God. And thinking about these things has made me the way that I am today. There's lots of things that I've thought about and that I believe that aren't in the book. I'm trying to provide, as it were, a summary of some of the most important issues in the book. But for myself, yes, I'm a practicing Catholic, and that to me is the way that I would want to live my life. And it's a reflection of my upbringing, and I've dedicated the book to my mother, who did work hard and pay for a lot of my education. I did get a Commonwealth scholarship, which, as you previously suggested, in some countries it's not free. We would have had to pay a lot of money for that, but she still supported me with clothing and books and other things that I needed to go through university. So, yeah, I'm grateful to all of the experiences and support that I've had in my life. It's made me what I am today.
Well, Peter, I have so enjoyed my time with you here today. Thank you so much for visiting me here on Daily Spark TV. And then before I let you go, one last time, if you could please, can you remind everyone of the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
The title of the book is Modern Catholic Concerns. It's available on Amazon. It's available on my website, petermazurek.com, and in bookshops where they sell this kind of book. There is on my website a facility to ask questions or blogs, or what they're called. I'm not on Facebook or other social media, but my internet address is available to everybody, and I've contacted it through that. And the book is also available from my website through my publisher's link.
I love it. Thank you again, Peter, for being a guest with me here on Daily Spark TV. First, thank you for spending time with us here as well. I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you to be your best today as well. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.